You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Hello, citizens of the Milky Way. This is Dylan Hackworth.
And I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is the Creep Street Podcast. A little bit of housekeeping up front. Please follow us on Twitter at Creep Street Pod. Follow our Instagram at Creep Street Podcast. Follow us on Facebook. Please like and review our show. And please tell all your friends about it. Thank you so much. It really does make a difference.
It truly does.
It truly, truly does. So let's get to it. Today we are talking about the mysterious death of Elisa Lam.
Very, very mysterious.
Bizarre. I remember in 2013 when this happened, it was a big deal. I remember people obsessing over this video.
People who don't usually like this kind of stuff knew about it and had seen the video.
Right. And believe me, folks, there's more than just this video, which obviously we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about all the sort of things that were orbiting it at the time, and a lot of fascinating stuff. Unfortunately, a very unfortunate and sad situation, but still very fascinating, and we're going to get into it right now. So I'm going to start by telling you just a little bit about Elisa Lam. She was born April 30th, 1991 in Vancouver, British Columbia. She was a Canadian citizen, and she was in the United States taking a little personal vacation in California. She had arrived in Los Angeles on January 26, 2013. She had already been in California for a few days, stopping at other places. 2 days after she arrives in Los Angeles, she checks into the Cecil Hotel, which is right near the famed LA neighborhood Skid Row. Initially, and this was something I did not know, I had not heard about this, but initially she was given a shared room, but was moved to a room of her own for what was later described by the hotel's lawyer as strange behavior.
Yeah, like what could that mean?
What could that mean to get you moved out of essentially a hostel? Now, Elisa had contacted her parents every day while on her vacation, and on January 31st, she failed to do so, which obviously aroused some concern in her parents. They contacted the LAPD, and they even flew down to Los Angeles themselves to help search, and it was a few weeks before anything turned up. On February 15th, though, a video is released to the public that was taken on February 1st, I believe, was when the actual footage was captured. And this video is something people still talk about it today.
Yes.
It's bizarre.
It's really creepy, for real.
Absolutely. Maureen, tell us a little bit about this video.
Basically, the long and short of it is that it's one of those cameras in an elevator that's mounted up in a corner.
Right.
So it's single shot the whole time. You don't get multiple angles. It's just that downward shot. So Elisa comes in and she just immediately is acting very weird. She comes in to the elevator, hits all of the buttons, and immediately is like hiding. Yeah. Essentially.
And here's the thing about the hiding, because we've talked about it. There's times when it seems she's afraid.
Right.
And times when it seems like she's almost playing with like a kid.
Right.
She pokes her head out repeatedly out of the elevator like she's playing peekaboo.
Yeah.
And at times appears to be speaking to someone you don't see. And keep in mind, and we're going to describe this video in depth, but keep in mind, everything that happens in this elevator, the whole time, this elevator door stays open.
Which should not be doing.
Should not happen. I mean, it might suggest that is someone holding down the button, but here's the thing: there's many times where she pokes her head out and looks both ways as if no one's there.
Right.
And then she'll go back and hit more buttons. She'll like hit all the buttons on the elevator, and she'll like step out. She'll step back. She'll put her hands up to her ears.
Yeah.
Almost like she's dizzy. And that was a lot of people at first maybe thought she was under the influence, or maybe she was drunk, or under the influence of drugs or something. Later that was proven to not be true in a toxology report, which I will dive into in a little while. But then the most strange part of the video, she's like hunched over, and her hands are out in front of her palms down, and it's almost like she's the only thing I can think. It's imagine like hands conducting like marionette puppets.
Yeah,
almost. It's like she's. It's hard to describe it.
Well, I mean, she's moving her fingers in a very strange way where in some instances it almost looks kind of graceful, and then in other instances it looks really weird and almost like super exaggerated. It almost looked to me like her fingers were like getting longer.
Yes. And I don't know if it's pixel, because there's moments when like her mouth pixelates.
Right.
It's an effect of just poor camera quality.
It's just, like some surveillance camera. Yeah.
But it's freaky because for a split second, it looks as if her hands grow, the fingers grow.
Yeah. And especially, and it's right at this time when she's doing all these kind of like waving motions with her fingers, and it's weird. It's very weird. And keep in mind, at this time, Elisa Lam was 21 years old, so she was a young woman. And eventually, she steps out of the elevator, walks away, and the elevator doors close and go on their way. And something I remember that's just stuck in my head, it just added this creepy ambiance to it. Because obviously the whole thing with the door not closing is so creepy. And then as the door closes, and then because she hit all these buttons, the elevator obviously just goes up floor by floor, floor by floor. And you can tell it's going to other floors because, like, it'll open and you can tell, like, the carpet's different. Mm-hmm. But it's just a haunting thing that this elevator would stay open and then finally take off. Right.
That is unfortunately not where it ends. Days go by. And people staying at the hotel begin to report weird things going on with their water. The water smells funny. The water, some people report it being like black or murky and like an unusual like sweet taste.
Oh, God.
Which, from what I've heard, LA has poor water. But I mean,
this was on another level.
This is on another level. What I mean, and also it's that's not there's a difference between poor water and black murky water.
Yeah.
This had been brought up to management at the hotel. Finally, they investigate, and that is when they found the body of Elisa Lam on February 19th on top of the roof inside the hotel's water tank.
Yeah. Woof.
Now, folks, this water tank was up on a roof. From what I believe was typically locked out.
I think it was the door to the roof was locked.
Locked out. I'm sure it's even got a sign that says "Do not," employees only, or takes you to the rooftop. And then, if I remember correctly, you have to go up like some stairs once you're on the rooftop because these water tanks are tall.
They're very tall.
They're like I think there's measurements I've written down here somewhere, but yes, they're very tall. And then to get in, you have to lift this extremely like heavy lid, and then there's like a window into it that's like 16 inches. It's tiny, but somehow her body was able to get in there.
Right.
And urban legends have only spawned from this because there's no real explanation.
It doesn't make any sense at all because it really seems like she would need to, I don't remember exactly how much they said the lid weighed. I thought that it was actually impossible for her to lift it up, that someone else would have had to have been there. And also she wasn't wearing any clothes. Very odd.
Right.
And she had been dead for like 3 days or no more than 3 days. She had been dead for that whole time.
We assume February 1st.
Right. I'm sorry. Yes.
When the video was taken. We assume. Now, here's what's weird. After the toxology report comes out, now keep in mind, it did come out she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Right.
And she had been taking medication for it. Toxology report comes out. There is no traces of any kind of other than her prescriptions. And I think maybe like a little like ibuprofen or over the counter things that's not going to make you do this.
Right.
No, not even marijuana was in her system. Now I'm not a forensics expert. I don't know the effect of being in water for a few weeks, what that does to a body, how long things stay in the system. I don't know how that works. So
just a quick little thing. I heard that, I don't even really know what this means, but I think they had to like drill a hole in the side of the tank to take her out because if they had lifted her out, like her skin would have fallen off or something. I don't even know what that means.
Right. And I don't know. Yeah. I'm assuming maybe because of just the process of decomposition, if that's why. But here's the thing also that was discovered in this toxology report. Well, because it wasn't just toxology, it was also a full autopsy. So no drugs of any kind other than things she was, not even marijuana.
Not alcohol, I
Not
don't even think.
alcohol, or I mean, I think they said there was a little, like a 0.2%, something like that. It was very, nothing that way. And once again, I don't know how things work in terms of when you're dead, how things stay in the body, and I don't know any of that. So, I'm speaking from a place of ignorance in that regard. But
the police didn't seem to think that was something to worry about.
Right.
So that makes you think.
Right, exactly. And also, there was no signs of sexual assault, no signs that there was no, obviously, that she had been beaten or stabbed, or obviously there was no, bullet, that this was foul play.
Right.
No signs of that whatsoever. In fact, there was a surprising lack of, even to fit her, if someone were to try to put her through that 16-inch hole,
there would be something.
Nothing.
So that thing the lid must have been
open
up.
or something, yes. And she was only, if I believe correctly, like I will check the autopsy report here in a second to just make sure I'm right, but I want to say she was only about like 5'2".
I think she was pretty small.
She was a petite girl, so to be able to lift this thing, to get it would have been one hell of a feat for her to accomplish.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. So they pretty much count out that it was drugs and stuff like that, and count out that it was some sort of a foul play. I just don't know what to think.
Because it's super easy to kind of be like, oh, she was acting really, really strange in the elevator, but that could be a million different things. As we know, she did have some mental health issues. It seems to me like this was she had some pretty intense manic spots and depressive spots. Because usually the little I do know about this is that not all bipolar people are going to, pop off and do whatever she was doing in the elevator. But I think she had some more extremes to her. So maybe that would explain some of the erratic behavior or something. But recently she seemed to have been doing fine and everything. But, whatever. Even if you could just write off the elevator part, how did she get in that water tank? Like something had to have happened. Right. And there's no way that it was just her. Because how could she have managed it?
Absolutely. And here's what's interesting. You can actually find her autopsy report is online. You just Google or Bing, Elisa Lam. I use Bing, baby. Yeah. Elisa Lam autopsy report. And it was initially ruled out as could not be determined. Right. Cause of death. And a few days later, that was changed to accident. Mm-hmm. There's so much. First of all, how horrible. But two, then to find out that way. To find out, my God, weeks later that it's in the water, and such a horrible, horrible thing. And you got to think, people, there's many theories. Obviously, first and foremost, people thought, was she on drugs? Obviously, from what we could tell from this toxicology report, doesn't seem like it.
Right.
I guess she wore spectacles or glasses,
spectacles. You are 1,000 years old.
I'm 1,000 years young, milady. I find this kind of a just a shot in the dark, but there were theories that, well, maybe she was so hard of seeing that she didn't have her glasses on in the video. Maybe like all this like reaching out, pushing the button, and like getting real close to the button was that she couldn't see, and was like maybe someone was chasing after, she couldn't really see anyone, unless she and this is another thing someone pointed out in another podcast that I like. Every picture you see of her in glasses, they aren't like really thick. Now obviously you can't tell just from looking at someone's glasses alone what kind of prescription they are, but they aren't like, it didn't seem like they were for someone who was just blind, like right. Blind as a bat. You know what I mean? She would have been able to know where a wall was, where buttons were.
It's very extreme. And even if she was, even if her eyesight was very, very bad,
right.
The way that she was behaving doesn't really make sense. Right. I don't really know what she would even be trying to accomplish.
Right.
Maybe that is a part of it. Maybe that wasn't the reason why she was acting that way, but maybe the fact that she wasn't wearing her glasses made it worse.
And once again, I know I've said this, but obviously this is a video without sound. It seems as though she goes through a whole gamut of emotions.
Yes.
It does seem at times like she's terrified and hiding from something, and then it seems like she's playing with something almost at times.
It's very weird.
And then at times it seems like she's trying to scare something by like hopping out. She like hops out as if she's playing like with a child, like boo, like,
Yeah.
it's bizarre.
It is very weird.
So obviously there is so much that is just unanswered. It is so strange. But believe it or not, that is not the only strange thing that has happened.
Not even close.
At the Cecil Hotel.
Yes.
Maureen, tell us about some of these things. Is it even called the Cecil Hotel anymore?
Well, I think now it's called Stay on Main, but it's kind of, people are still, it still goes by Cecil.
While you're talking about it, I'll look
Cecil.
it up. I'll see the history of this thing.
Sure. Also, do you want to give a shout out to the podcast you were saying we use for research?
Yes, absolutely. I one of the podcasts I listened to while doing research for this, upon reading articles and whatnot, Thinking Sideways, an episode. It was an episode they did back in 2014. Found it. I've always been a fan and really was inspired by some of their takes and whatnot. Very interesting stuff.
So thank you to them. So yes, now we will dive into the very strange and checkered past of the Cecil Hotel.
Now you tell me, because a lot of this I don't know.
Really. Oh,
I've
really?
only heard like a few things of things outside of Elisa Lam.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
Well, so a lot of stuff has happened, when we're not even going to cover all of it right now, because it's a lot. As we've mentioned a little bit of this before, but so the Cecil Hotel was opened in 1927, and it was really close to Skid Row in LA, which basically, as it sounds like, is area of LA that has, or at least had at the time, I think it still does, a lot of homelessness, drug addiction, what have you. So it was opened, like I said, 1927, and ever since then, there has been a big history of suicide happening at the hotel. Especially there was a jump or a peak of it in the 30s and 40s, where it was happening very, very often. The first case of suicide that I was able to find happened in 1931. So not long after it started, a man named W.K. Norton poisoned himself.
Whoa.
Yes. And his body was found in his room, as you might assume. And so that was the first case. And ever since then, there's been lots. One that I think is very, very notable was in 1962, a woman named Pauline Otten was at the Cecil Hotel with her husband. She was estranged from her husband, but I think they were trying to figure it out, work it out in some way, it seems like. So she went to her husband's workplace to talk with him. And I guess they wanted more privacy or wanted to be able to talk more freely or whatever. So they ended up going to the Cecil to talk. I don't really know what happened, but the husband left, I believe around 7 p.m., I think, to go to dinner by himself.
Oh.
Yes. So it sounds like things probably weren't good because, he was leaving alone. But who knows? I don't know. So he leaves. And not long after that, Pauline jumps from the 9th floor window, her room, and she lands on a man named George Gianni, who was just walking down the street.
Oh.
And killed both of them. And a lot of people at first, because I don't think there were people around that saw the fall as it was happening. So they thought, this must have been some kind of suicide pact. They jumped together. Yes. But then they were able to find out because his shoes were still on and his hands were in his pockets. They were able to deduce that he did not jump from the window because this is, gruesome. If you jump from a window at that height with your shoes on, usually your shoes aren't going to stay on.
Side note, have I told you the story? Yes.
Tell the
very
peeps.
briefly. This was, I won't say the hotel here in Chicago, just not their fault. There was a suicide. So this was right around the holiday season of 2014, I believe, because I remember Interstellar had just come out in theaters. And I was walking from the IMAX, and it was near the holiday season. I had headphones in. I was listening to some Christmas music, and I was just thinking about Interstellar because I really liked it. And I'm just going over it in my mind. I'm listening to like Perry Como or something because
classic.
You
got to.
And I'm walking, and I look, and in front of me, right in the street, just off the sidewalk in the street, is a body.
Oh my God!
And by then, a few people had gathered around, and in the distance, I could hear sirens. And I looked at, I guess he had committed suicide.
And he had just done it, too.
Just done it. And
wow.
That was just so, and I remember because his shoe was 20 feet away.
Right.
And yeah, absolutely absolutely bizarre.
That is so scary
Yeah,
and hard to see.
Absolutely bizarre. But yeah, so I mean, it's a weird thing, especially when you're listening to Christmas music. It's funny
Right.
because that image is burned in my brain because I'm listening to happy-go-lucky, Christmas tunes, and there's, this unfortunate gentleman, laying in the street. But anyway, yes, keep going.
Yeah.
With,
That sounds like the beginning of like a premium cable
I know.
limited series.
oh yeah, it sounds like absolutely. It sounds like the beginning of like a True Detective season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True Detective, like Christmas
Season
status.
Season 8. Yeah.
Cute. Well, HBO, let us know if you want us to write that. So in 1962, so Pauline and George Gianni, or Pauline Otten and George Gianni both died, unfortunately, because of Pauline Otten jumping out of that window. You hate to hear it. But there was, of course, lots of other instances of suicide happening at the hotel, but that's not the only thing that was happening. There's also a big history of murder happening at the hotel. Mm-hmm. And there's lots and lots of examples, but I've picked 3 here that I think are of note and worthy of talking about. Now, the first one, this one is insane to me. I cannot believe this. I mean, I can't believe it had happened, but like wild. Okay, so there's this woman. Her name was Dorothy Jean Purcell. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was 19 years old in 1944.
Okay.
She's in the hotel room with her boyfriend, who was 38. Yikes, Right. I gotta say, 38 to 19, it's a lot. Anyway, unrelated. So they're in the room together. I'm pretty sure we're both asleep. She wakes up with horrible, horrible stomach pains. So she's like, oh, I'm 19. Like, I can't fucking tell this guy that I'm sleeping with that I'm like in a lot of pain and I'm going to like shit my pants. It was what she thought.
Right.
So she's like, I'm going to go to the bathroom quietly and deal with this myself. So she does. And she gives birth.
What?
To a baby boy. Yes. Have you ever seen the show I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant?
Yeah.
So this is basically at 1944 status.
Wow.
Isn't that insane?
Wow.
So she gives birth quietly enough. Women, especially young women, will do anything to not be a nuisance. Okay.
Oh my God.
And we need to not do that. Okay. We need to say, excuse me, I'm giving birth to a baby.
Honey, geez, yeah. Dear God.
Help me, honey. I know that you're asleep, but I'm giving birth. So she gives birth. She's like, yikes. She also thinks the baby is stillborn. So she's like, oh no. So this is trigger warning, guys. This is kind of a lot. Mm-hmm. So she thinks the baby is stillborn. So she throws it out the window and it landed on a roof of another building. Later, it was found out that the baby was not stillborn.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So that is rough. So this is just a taste of the truly wild things that are happening at this hotel. And she was actually, what's the word? She was not convicted. She was not guilty of the crime on terms of insanity, is what they were told. She was not in the clear mind space. I mean, clearly there was something was going on because that's wild.
Right.
But okay, now one of the biggest murders that is connected to the Cecil Hotel is the Night Stalker himself, Richard Ramirez.
Yikes.
A true turd.
Yeah, a future episode.
Yes, truly. Yes,
Real
exactly.
bastard.
We'll get into all of those details in a future episode. Really, like probably one of the most evil people recorded.
Truly.
So for those of you who don't know, Richard Ramirez was a serial killer that was very active in the 80s, I believe 84 to 85. And he would randomly, at least seemingly randomly, was just killing people all throughout LA. And that was very, very scary for a lot of the people living there at the time. And he also wouldn't just kill them. He would also, unfortunately, he would sexually assaulted a lot of people. He mutilated some people. It was really bad, terrible.
Yeah, I think he was also, at least he claimed to be a Satanist as
Right.
well, I believe,
Right.
Yeah.
So not a cool guy in my book. Okay. So this is what he would do. Apparently he stayed at the top floor of the Cecil Hotel. I don't know if it was how long he was doing this for, but at least for a period of time. And what he would do was he would commit the murders. He would come back to the Cecil Hotel, take off his blood-soaked clothes, just throw them in the dumpster.
God.
And then he would just walk from the dumpster up to his room in either just his underwear or completely naked. And that's the type of place this was at the time, that no one like batted an eye at that.
Wow.
People were just like, whatever.
Wow.
Like apparently there were active, open drug dealings happening at the hotel. And also sometimes there would just be bodies of people that had overdosed just all throughout the hotel in the hallways because no one wanted to be the one that called the police,
right.
apparently. Basically, why I'm telling you this is because that's how Richard Ramirez was able to be anonymous for so long, was
right.
because even though he was acting so bizarre, everyone around him was acting so bizarre.
Right.
It didn't really stand out. This place was really in a rough spot.
Right. It's really like evil just orbits this place.
Right? Like it really feels like it. It's very odd.
It's just a conduit for evil and misfortune.
Right. Which is weird because when it was first built, or first opened at least, it wasn't meant to be like, oh, we're opening up, a cheap hotel. Not that I don't know if many people go into opening a business thinking like, this is going to suck. But they didn't go into it thinking like this was the clientele that would ever be there. It was supposed to be like a nice hotel. It was really beautiful. There was a lot of marble. It was kind of Art Deco style.
Right.
And then the Great Depression kind of tanked it. And ever since then, it hasn't really been able to pop back. Anyway, so Richard Ramirez, even though I don't believe, I could be wrong here, I don't believe he committed any of the murders at the Cecil Hotel. It was a home base for him. And there was a lot of evidence there in that dumpster that just people never thought to check. But that takes me to the next story, which I think this one is very, very interesting.
Okay. Spill the porridge.
Spill the tea, honey. Okay, so this was in the 90s, I believe.
All right.
I believe it was 1999 or 91. A 41-year-old Austrian journalist named Jack Unterweger, I think is how you say it.
Okay.
I only know English. I'm kind of one of those, losers that doesn't. I'm not very good at other languages. Okay. A 41-year-old Austrian journalist, Jack Unterweger. He came to LA to write a piece on crime because at this time, LA was really notorious for its crime and its crime rate and so newspaper or magazine or whatever he was working for was like, yes, that sounds interesting. We want to know about this. So he goes to LA and he decides that he wants to stay at the Cecil Hotel. So he does. And he's working with the LAPD. He's going on drive-alongs. He's meeting people like actual informants like that the police have actually made. He's meeting a lot of prostitutes.
Wow.
While he's there, and under the guise of he's writing a story about this. While he's there, a few of these prostitutes that he had met ended up being killed. They were strangled by their own bras.
What the hell?
Which is poetic, but bad.
That is so wild.
Yes.
That this guy was able to just kind of waltz in. Was he actually a journalist?
So here we go. This is the situation. He actually was a journalist, but this was not the first time that he had done this. Apparently he had done this to a few different women in Europe, but he did do it specifically. He was convicted of doing it one time in Germany. I don't remember the year exactly that it was that he did this, but he was convicted of murder, of killing this woman with her fucking bra.
Right.
But then when he got into prison, he really surrendered himself to the art of writing, and he did poetry and he wrote plays and all of this stuff. And I guess the community really rallied behind him and kind of used him as like, wow, look what rehabilitation can do for someone. Like, he's come so far.
Right.
So he's known for all of this. And he ended up being able to get off early on parole because he seemed like he had been totally rehabilitated. Then he gets a job as a journalist and then goes to America and he does all of this again. And once again, don't know if he committed any of these crimes at the Cecil Hotel, but he stayed at the Cecil Hotel and came to America for this story, largely influenced or largely because of Richard Ramirez.
Wow.
And then he actually when he was brought back to Austria, he was convicted, and he committed suicide that night by hanging himself. Yeah, so there you go.
Unbelievable. So Elisa Lam is just one chapter in a very dark book that is the Cecil Hotel.
That's right.
That is absolutely crazy.
Yeah. What? Oh, I'm like, I kind of want us to go there.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't want to set foot inside.
Absolutely. It sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the story of the mysterious death of Elisa Lam and the Cecil Hotel. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And citizens of the Milky Way, good night and goodbye.